Okay. Okay, we're all live. I'm just going to get you up on the other screen. It'll just take me 2 seconds. That way we can get your comments in both locations, which is fantastic. Okay, lovely. So we are live, everyone. So hey to you if you are joining in the Superhuman Summit. We are technically 2 minutes early, which is just my style. So I'm AJ will laugh when she knows that we've gotten on early, Anuraj, because anything I ever do, I'm 5 or 10 or however many minutes early. So
that's great.
We'll roll with it today.
Sure.
So a massive welcome to you all as you're joining on. I can see a whole bunch of people are starting to join on. And also a huge welcome to Anuraj Gambhir, who's going to be our speaker for this session. Now, Anuraj, you named your talk Rediscovering Your Bliss. And already the title has me very interested in what it is you might be talking about. I know that with your background, there's so many things that you can talk about. So I'm hoping you've been able to select something that you really love to speak about and that will have some great resonance with people.
Certainly, yeah. No, I look forward to great interaction with everybody. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, I might hand it straight over to you, Anuraj, and we can get going.
No, wonderful. So I've got few slides, and I'll just get started with that one. So firstly, so I'm talking about rediscovering your bliss mode, really, where technology and spirituality really converge to a whole new level. I'll start with some technology trends, some mega trends. And the first essential one, really, I think, which everyone is very much aware of, is the Industrial Revolution, which is maturing very fast. And we move from mechanization to electrification, mass production to automation. And the computer revolution we are going through is deepening further with the fourth industrial revolution, with the convergence of and fusion of exponential technologies, right from IoT, AI, big data, blockchain, robotics, basically augmenting intelligence across the board. And so what we're also seeing is there's another very major sort of next level trend that's under play right now. And we're already thinking forward for a fifth industrial revolution, where the focus is on the integration of cooperation of man and machine as tech converges to enable high levels of intelligence and connect with consciousness. But the realization is so much about humanity first. And we'll be looking at some of those examples as we go along. So I think most people probably know about the exponential technologies, right from neurotech, 3D, 4D printing, synthetic biology, quantum computing, AR, VR, Internet of Things, and AI. Of course, with machine learning and deep learning, technology hype cycle, that a lot of technologies have really crossed the chasm. And we're really seeing that happen very rapidly. In fact, one of the key areas which I want to point to was really the two-way BMI, the brain-machine interface, which is still at an early trigger, but we're really seeing that with other technologies as AI and so forth evolve. And of course, AGI is still a little further away, which is artificial general intelligence, when machines really get more intelligent than humanity. I think that's still quite a way away, but we're heading there very fast. So
when is that estimated time, out of interest? Is there an actual time that people have put to that?
Yeah, so there's two dates that Ray Kurzweil talks about, which is 2029, which is really where the first phase of, it's not really AGI, it's the element of, machines becoming as smart in some ways as humans. I mean, they're already surpassing in certain criteria, as we've seen with some of the games that they've been playing with, Watsons and the so forth. But we talked about 2045 is the other date, really the big one that Ray Kurzweil talks about for AGI to really take on. But again, it's all up for grabs. We're talking quite a bit into the future, and it's things are moving so fast that it might even be earlier to an extent. And I think that's where it is about how humanity can evolve even further beyond with its traits that we can evolve. And I'll be talking a bit about that, the exponential mindset.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, I mean, a lot of what's really happening is tech is enabling access to affordable solutions for individuals and humanity at large to take charge of their holistic well-being, becoming happier, healthier, and more spiritually connected, allowing them to lead more meaningful lives. And that's the kind of hopefully a quick journey I'll take everyone through. So we have a very vast wellness ecosystem and landscape. I think we've seen various aspects of physical, mental, and spiritual well-being sort of being formulated as part of that whole ecosystem. But the spiritual ecosystem itself is pretty deep and wide also in its own right. And I think spirituality is much more beyond what people talk about as religious beliefs and so forth. It's really about connecting directly to your soul and your conscious being, you know, uh, and really it's all about diving within us rather than looking outside. So that's where we talk about, or there's a area where we talk about the evolution of from physical to EQ, IQ to EQ to SQ. And it's really become pretty much that level of analogy of the Maslow's hierarchy as we move up that
Mm-hmm.
ladder. So to give a quick story, well, Steve Jobs with his friend Daniel Kotke visited India in 1974 in April, and he spent about a month and a half there in search of, well, enlightenment or really to visit a few ashrams and practice various areas of Zen Buddhism and meditation and learn very interesting areas. And he really, I think, came up with quite some interesting learnings from that trip. And in fact, is one of his favorite books has been Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda.
Mm-hmm.
That was the only book given to everybody at his funeral too. And people really allude him, with his after his trip to India, getting that clarity and that purpose, that ikigai, where he could really go and formulate Apple, which him and the other Steve Wozniak formulated in 1976 formally. And it's really interesting how that whole journey sort of led to that space. So a lot of the work I've been doing in my own journey is actually been looking at technology and spirituality coming together with my own background, actually having my parents, my dad has been very much into technology, been in electronics, and my mom has been very much spiritually driven. So my upbringing was very interesting in that format, to grow up in the foothills of the Himalayas and being exposed to lots of saints and sages, but at the same time, really tinkering with a lot of tech. And my own journey of my career led me through that path. And at many a point, including one of my key, roles at Siemens, where we came up with a lot of mood boards, and this is one of them, where we had well-being, looking at that whole space from a very wide angle. And it was really looking at how balance has become out of balance, really, and we need to really go after that equilibrium, which is work-life balance and a lot more. And I think that's been certainly accelerated because of COVID and the times that we have now, the exponential times of key learning and reset and reboots that we are going through. And we've also seen stress levels have been rising, and more so recently, people have really going through that phase of, unfortunately, there's been a lot of depression in certain areas, and there's been burnouts, obviously, in the corporate world earlier, and stress levels have generally been rising, and it's a big concern. So we're talking about how can we look at all our five senses and go beyond them, and that's where about 15 years ago, my team at Siemens, we'd come up with a concept called the Zen device, and this was very much focused around music being the eternal sort of language. And what we looked at in there was really a wellness oasis or a spa phone concept, which was focused on relaxation via music, and it was using noise cancelling headphones, really tuning into the environment. And so say you're in a kind of a concrete jungle, you can really get into that mode of and that's what I really talk about, moving into a space of called the Bliss mode, which is analogous to your aircraft mode, as we talk about in your mobile phones, right?
So can I ask a question, Anuraj? When
Yep.
I hear the word bliss, it makes me assume that there is a particular level of consciousness that's referred to as bliss. Is that correct? Or does bliss come more from a proverbial sort of use of the word?
Well, actually, it's a pretty wide. I'm using it a little bit loosely here, to be very frank, but it's here I'm using it in a sense of that almost like through an app or through a, instead of. In fact, my next slide I'll be talking about. It's not about using your phone which is causing a lot of stress, but flipping it into that mode, which will bring about that phase of relaxation and enable the right. It'll curate the level of well-being for you for that level. And that's kind of what I'm referring to as the bliss mode. This set. But as we evolve, you'll see a little bit more examples of how we go deeper into that bliss mode analogy and how I sort of evolve it into a lot more immersive and experiential means where it becomes very interactive and hyper-personalized. So we'll go through that in a little bit. So the Zen phone, again, this was the actual visual of what it looked like, with, as I said, with noise cancelling headphones and haptic ball interfaces. So you've got various elements of haptics and touch and feel and see. And it was really that essence of what we worked on through the body, mind, and the soul, even in the design of mobile devices, which is part of my journey in my career, looking at the design experience, the user experience, and the brand product feeling, which was really then the soul of how that evolved. So when I was very fortunate and very honored to be meeting His Holiness in about 12 years ago now, it was put forward a kind of a very bold vision of saying, imagining a world where we've created the breakthrough phenomena of a device or a solution which can help heal people through their suffering and bring about this work-life balance and help humanity to rediscover their true essence. So it was really addressing these very issues, and it was a very early tinker of some of these ideas and saying, okay, what can we do through apps, the right content, the exposure through what's at everybody's fingertips, their smartphones and emerging feature phones at that time. That how could we get them closer to really dive within themselves, really, because happiness really is within ourselves, not something we can find outside. So it's really, the technology can be the pointer or the means to help you attain it through that. So it's really about, and as we've seen with COVID, people really haven't been able to go outside, and it's, I think, really been a great learning to go within us. And a lot of my journey has been on wearable technologies and designing means to enhance our well-being specifically, and quantifying ourselves from sick care to true healthcare in that sense, as we call it. But it's a journey of what we really call from wearables to wear to able. And through that, and that's where I've kind of done a wearable tech fashion show also in Costa Rica, learning to go within. And a lot of my journey has been on wearable technologies and designing means to enhance our well-being. Started playing a little video there, quantifying ourselves from sick care to true healthcare in that sense, as we call it. But it's a journey of what we really call from wearables to wear to able. I think there seems to be a delay with through that. That's where I've kind of done a wearable tech fashion show also. So wearables have very much been from wrist-worn wearables to hearables, which are in ear and really disappearing to that level. Are you able to hear me okay? So I'm getting a little bit of echo, something.
Yeah, I'm getting some feedback for some reason.
Yeah. Let me just make sure I'm muted here. Okay. Yeah. I'm sure with it. So that's an example of various wearables we've got on the screen. And here's another one which is really smart yoga tights called Natty X. And
Anuraj, no, there's something wrong with the sound.
Yeah, I'm getting some
feedback for some reason.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to fix it.
Yeah. I think it's to do with the Facebook, maybe that is going a little delayed, right, on the screen. And here's another one which is really smart yoga tights called Natty X.
Anuraj, no, there's something wrong with the sound.
Yeah. See, it's coming delayed quite a bit. So maybe it's while you're streaming it through other channels, could be.
I don't know how to fix it.
Are you able to stop the Facebook stream and then restart it?
Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. We'll stop it and restart it.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah. We'll keep the Zoom on, right? Like right now.
Anuraj, no, there's something wrong with the sound.
Yeah. See, it's coming delayed.
Okay, try now, Anuraj.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah, that should be better, I think.
Better, yep. Good. So these are the Natty yoga tights, which are obviously helping you with your physical sort of well-being and helping you correct your yoga posture, giving you right feedback. But something called the Tesla suit. It takes, the full body sort of wearable to a whole new level. And what we can do with that is really looking at full haptics, climate control, biometrics, and motion capture. And what they also recently launched was, I've got a quick little video on this. See if that. So it's been used a lot in simulations for looking at wellness is one of the new big areas. And it's been used for simulating heat for firefighter training, for example, for, in the gaming space quite a bit, and in the corporate world for miners, for certain, B2B spaces, but has a whole range of use cases, which is quite phenomenal. It's really the next most biggest high-tech wearable that we can talk about with virtual reality. So fully immersive and takes you through quite some.
And what's the time frame on when they're coming to market?
So we had them at the Singularity U Summit here last year, and we're going to have them again next year. In fact, they've already been doing some test runs with NASA, and in fact for space tourism, so helping training for that. They're already doing various pilots around the world, but I would say officially launching and commercially heading out. It's not going to be a consumer play yet, but it's going to head in that direction. Probably next year sometime, early to mid next year for the corporate, enterprise sort of space. And this year at CES, they launched the glove, actually, the smart glove, which enables a whole new use cases. And we're talking about biometry and, really looking at oxygen saturation, stress levels, looking at real-time, pulse, heart rates, and so forth. So there's a lot of other elements which are coming on board as they're sophisticating very rapidly in that space. So what I've got a picture here now is actually of a smart car, autonomous, concept car. And I was quite honored to be at the launch of that and at CES this year in Las Vegas. And it's the AVTR concept by Mercedes-Benz. And it's really a holistic well-being sort of autonomous future that we're talking about with mood and stress analytics, adaptive UI, integrating spirituality and the natural environments. It's using vegan materials, full health vitals, virtual personalized landscapes, and which are projected seamlessly across the display, across the screen in the interior. And so imagine a personal spa or an oasis in an autonomous vehicle that we can ensure that we arrive rejuvenated as we arrive through our journey, and the journey becomes a retreat. So quite some interesting trends that are out there.
I love that idea of, you're going down the road on a road trip for a 4-hour road trip, and so you get to be in a mini day spa on the way down. I think that's a fantastic idea.
Exactly. There's so much potential there, and I think this is the glimpse that the concept vehicles and concept devices give us for the future, how quickly we can embrace that and bring it on board. And in fact, that was the launch of that vehicle, which I just filmed with my phone. Right. So the future is really very much here. It's just not very evenly distributed, as they say.
And I think that's the interesting thing about a lot of the technology applications that you're talking about is people might have heard of them, or they might think about them as though they're 20 or 30 years off in the future. But as you're saying, they're here now, they're available, they're on the market, the majority of them.
That's right. Yeah. I mean, they're being tested, they're being trialed. There's so much in the labs right now. And, there's some pioneering work happening in research that is coming very quickly closer to industry and the real world. So I think that's why the startup world is taken on innovation to a whole new level. And in fact, here's an example of that, which is a company that I was very fortunate to mentor, and we moved them to Silicon Valley, called Relax VR. So we're using virtual reality with, a full immersive sort of multimedia, very, soothing sort of graphics and right music, which we can customize, and with the voiceover meditation. So take you through quite a journey of relaxation in a virtual reality mode. And of course, there are many other players in this space now. Headspace and Calm have been around as apps. They're also been exploring the VR space. There's a great app called Trip, which is also TRIPP in this space, which is also very, very interesting. But we're taking that to a new level with biofeedback. So what we're really seeing is in fact, what I had here was more holograms and sort of real, human-like sort of areas, which are going to be the next phase of storytelling. And that's where it's kind of done a 360 with this whole space of psychological spatial connection and decision making. And we're really seeing that immersiveness and what I call experiation. We even had Professor Stephen Hawking at the Opera House about 5 years ago as a hologram or a pseudo hologram using a Pepper's Ghost type of a scenario. So it's very much about more about people rather than things, and that's kind of what we're really seeing happen. And another key trend in the neurotech area, which is where brainwave sensors are evolved so rapidly, we're talking about the space of EEG, which is electroencephalography, and various companies like NeuroSky, MindPlay, and so forth have so many applications in areas from wellness, learning, education, and many other spaces. So we're seeing that examples like this Sleep Shepherd. In fact, I'm holding it right here. You're able to see. So you basically put this on your forehead, and you can actually get a detailed analysis of your sleep. And it's got speakers integrated in the fabric, which wake you up to with binaural beats to your natural body clock. And looking at your deep sleep, your awake stage, your REM stage, and restless stage, and giving you a sleep score at the end. So brainwave sensors are, one of the most accurate means to measure your sleep. The other great tool in the, brainwave sensing space is really Muse, and Muse recently launched this Muse S-band early this year, which is a great device with a 5-channel EEG sensor, and it's really helping you. It's even got heart pulse oximetry and an accelerometer. It's helping you with your breathing analysis, and got over 300 pieces of content, which they've curated carefully for different types of meditation for different purposes and so forth. So there's a lot out there with technology that can enable you to, experience this whole space with, deeping diver into your, more into yourself and getting a proper understanding of quantifying how well you're performing with your meditative practices and how relaxed you are and so forth. And that's what we're really.
Do you think it's a little bit ironic that there's tech that can measure your spirituality? Like the idea of measuring how effectively you're meditating just seems a little bit kind of ironic to me.
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, it's more about giving you an indication at that stage, because you're obviously quite busy, or I mean, you're totally immersed into your meditation, and you're just wearing this device on the side, and it's later on that you can sort of see how well you sort of did in a quantified way. But yeah, it's I suppose it depends how you take it. It's for people who really at an early stage, maybe beginners who find it hard to concentrate, if they're able to sort of use the right practices and the right breathing technique. So this way they can actually get faster to the goal of getting there. Whereas if somebody who's very advanced don't need these tools really, I would say for them they're much beyond this.
Yeah.
So there are other tools that are available for them potentially to help them and to sort of gauge different levels as they build up their consciousness. So this was something we actually created called iZone, which was more an innovation thinking lab using the brain-computer interface, taking people through the right sort of content and putting them through and really looking at the high alpha and more creative stages, that you could see that they were really, you're tapping that creativity a lot more. So it was very much about how that imagination can be tapped a lot more. And similarly, in the education space, we're seeing a tool called Effective Learner, which you can measure, attention spans and look at how students are performing in the class and giving them the right breaks using a Pomodoro method to look at brainwave learning and ensuring that they're retaining the best information, and when they were not so attentive, what the teacher, for example, needs to go through again or revise. So it's really about that personalized, hyper-personalized learning scenario, which we're seeing here, and ensuring that the right level of memory retention and optimization happens through that. So it's really building that kind of a mind of the future through that regard. And another great research and activity and really productification that's happening out there is Elon Musk's company called Neuralink, which he started almost 4 years ago now. But in the last year and a half, they've made some massive breakthroughs. In fact, just a couple of months ago, they did a recent show and tell with 3 little pigs and experimentation of what we're talking about, the two-way brain-computer interface. And here we're talking about writing to the brain. So you're able to actually reinstate certain motor skills. And I think the whole intention is using this for people with disability and enhancing certain cognitive functions, for example. And that's where, so what Neuralink is really doing is what they're using non-invasive means through robotic pseudosurgery, and you're able to sort of have this implant, which is 100 the size of a human hair, and 1,000 of these probes into your brain, which will then be very precisely be able to measure and control certain aspects through neurological function there. So it's really taken, that whole aspect to a whole new level. And I would say it's really becoming indistinguishable from magic, this whole space. In fact, there's a product already out there, which is called by a company called Halo Neuroscience, using the similar technology, but it's a very kind of a lower, smaller version of that. And it's helping you with becoming a little more creative or tapping those right brain states, really been used in sports science quite a bit. And I had mine sitting right here, actually. So it's really got these electrodes at the top, which you sort of put on your head, and it uses a technology called TDCS, which is transcranial direct current stimulation, a very low current going through your head. I know it sounds scary, but it's really an interesting space. Another great tool, what we're really seeing is called heart math, and heart math is really tapping your heart intelligence by hacking pretty much into our consciousness. And they're really looking at the power of intuition, because we're connected with the Earth's electromagnetic fields, and the resonant frequency of the Earth's fields are exactly the same as the human heart rhythm when we're in a coherent state. And the heart math inner balance is actually helping us achieve that state much quicker by measuring heart rate variability and going through the right breathing exercises, going through heart rhythm training. And so it really is then about increasing your calm and improving focus, reducing your stress and boosting energy.
And they're all about global coherence, aren't they, with that project that they do?
That's right. Yeah. So that's another great thing that they've done, is taken on, people who are really wearing and doing that exercise around the world, where they can jointly come up with this a really powerful resonant sort of means to come up with that coherence in a mass scale level. And it really is very powerful, because that's when you really see that impact happening across so many people and everybody around you. But what's interesting to note is the heart has its own brain. In fact, there are 40,000 neurons, or brain cells, which are located in the heart. And there's more communications happening from the heart to the brain than the other way around. So it's very interesting how we can really tap that when we talk about intuition and our emotional balance and so forth, which is really coming from that angle.
So maybe it's the heart that's responsible for the origination of thought rather than the brain.
Could be, yes. I think the very seed of the thought, and I think that's where because there's a lot we don't know. Our subconscious mind is operating at such a hyper level, and what we're really conscious of is, I've heard of figures of 5 to 10% only of what we're actually been seeding in our early thoughts. So if we are able to tap a little deeper to the subconscious mind and using some of these technologies to enhance, I think that's where it can really can be really profound, the impact of that.
Mm.
So yeah, heart math. I've just got a quick little, I think, a video on this where we're talking about that whole, how the heart really becomes that central force of uplifting us to that whole new level, connecting through those neurons and then really touching on connecting and what I call heart to heart. We talk about B2B or B2C and so forth in our corporate world and so forth, but it's
H
when we
to H.
really connect edge to edge, when we connect with people truly deeper within. And in fact, on a technology level, the Apple Watch, for example, you're able to share your heart rhythm and your pattern with say your loved one over another Apple Watch. So it's a bit ironic there, but I think it's all about that mindfulness and that stage that we have to truly find ourselves in. And that's really where I think it's because the past is history, the future is a mystery, and it's really the present that we have, which is a true gift that we need to tap. And if these somehow we can help be a bit more mindful through these technologies, that's really the way to go. And a lot of the work I've been involved with and looking at, and all this, I think, coherent stage that we talk about. In fact, what you just mentioned about that global, coherence is something which can impact us. And what we really talk about a conscious smart city, and smart cities have evolved. I think that thinking of that is really about how integral, how we use the philosophy of a living organism, the Gaia philosophy, and how something which can really, and something which the works that we've been working on is floating smart cities of the future, where
Do you
entrepreneurship.
think, in your view, that smart cities go far enough with the integration into spirituality?
Not at the moment yet, but I think that's the type of thinking we're trying to inculcate, and say that they really need to think in that deeper level, because all we are thinking of is more technology. And we're certainly realizing that, yeah, humanity needs to be first and at the center of the smart city. But we're really working on things like transportation, healthcare, education, all those different facets coming together at different layers, and big data being used to analyze and optimize that work life for everybody. But I think it's a lot more deeper than that. It's how do we bring nature within ourselves, and that's some of the work that we've been talking about. Like when we take inspiration from places like Singapore, it's is it a garden in a city or a city in a garden? And I think that's the type of thinking, is how do we get closer back to nature, and what a smart city really does entail, and take us to a level of learning and understanding from true nature. And it's about that biophilic design. And what you see here in the center is this building, which is actually Atlassian's new headquarters. It's going to be ready in 2025, and it's been very much designed with biophilia as a core philosophy. And it's also a very COVID friendly, or a pandemic friendly building as they're designing it. And it's actually made of, it's the largest or the tallest hybrid timber tower uh, in the world. So 40-story building, which is going to be also the innovation hub, and all over the central, station in Sydney, right here. So and
Very
another key
cool.
learning in smart cities has very much been from the blue zones, I would say, because
Yeah.
that's where we have the most centenarians, right? Who
And
are,
that's interesting, because the blue zones do emphasize the role of spirituality more
yeah,
so than what I think what we are currently seeing. It seems to be more with smart cities, it seems to be a bit more of a functionalist sort of approach at the moment,
that's right.
where
Yes.
I think that could be much more integrated than what it is being.
Exactly. So I think that's where because the blue zones is really where it's the people, their whole interaction with nature, with the environment. It's what they eat, who they interact with, the social circle that they have, and it's all about that, the ambience that they create, and the upliftment to their mindset that they have is so is what creates that whole phenomena. And I've been on that sort of thinking, how can we democratize the blue zone philosophy. And I
Mm.
was very fortunate early this year, actually, to be in Costa Rica at one of the blue zones there in Nicoya Peninsula, and it was really amazing. And I felt so uplifted being in nature and visiting some of those volcanic and rainforests, and
And they've done an amazing job with reforesting like half the country, haven't they, in Costa
that's
Rica?
right. Yeah. I think the whole biosphere focus that they've had, and regenerative sort of elements of looking at taking from nature and really being part of it or merging into it, is what we're really seeing. And that's where I see nature becomes that sort of incubation center for humanity. And how do we make it into that living, breathing innovation lab, which is what the core of that whole smart city philosophy really should be. And and another key learning which I imbibed from a lot of my journey has been in this place called sacred sites. So there's a gentleman called Martin Gray who kind of renounced the normal world, and he traveled around capturing not just the historic significance of places, but the spiritual energy of places. And I think I was very fortunate to follow some of his work. In fact, there's also a documentary that he made, so I encourage everybody to have a look at some of his work. And there's his website mentioned there, sacredsites.com. And I was very fortunate to be with a friend up in Giza about 12 years ago, uh, meditating in the Cheops, in the King's Chamber of the oldest pyramid. And it was just the resonance we had in that chamber, and chanting Om, and the whole upliftment we had to our feeling so good, and that area was quite amazing. So another very interesting thing that happens around the world, I'm sure you're aware of Burning Man. There's 80,000 people get together in this place called Black Rock City since 1998. Actually, it started in 1986 in the US. but a temporary city comes up in the desert in Nevada for 9 days, and this event is is held for a metropolis which comes up dedicated to community, art, self-expression, and self-reliance. And what we're really seeing there is coming together of humanity at so many levels. And they have great principles of radical inclusion, gifting, decommodification, self-reliance, leaving no trace, and the immediacy of trying to act. And this year, unfortunately, of course, because of COVID, they didn't have it, but they had an online version called the Multiverse, which was really very interesting. And one of my dear friends, who's actually, I think he's on this call, listening in, Brian Kravitz, who's
yes,
actually,
he is. Yeah, he's posted a little bit in the feed. Yeah,
that's right. So he created a great, thing called the Unity Sanctuary, which is a true spiritual experience in virtual reality. And Unity Sanctuary is a multicultural place for sound and light healing. Its design, its design is based on religious and cultural ideologies and aesthetics. It deploys deep mathematical design and sacred geometry. So Brian can probably quickly have a word later on or mention about something more in the chat, or might get him on later on. But yeah, that's what we're really seeing is great inspiration from some of these areas. And in fact, something I was involved with starting just a year and a half ago was this exponential thought leaders bushwalk the talk, really having a lot of meetings in nature and having more meaningful conversations with a great number of people to come together and have the right level of thinking that we can share with each other. So all of this has kind of led me to a whole thinking of an aspect which we call white mirror. I don't know if you've seen Black Mirror on Netflix.
yes, I've seen a start of it. Yep.
So yeah, Black Mirror, of course, is a great show on Netflix, but unfortunately, it's very dystopian. It scares the hell out of many people. In fact, the layman especially, and because it uses technology, unfortunately, in a kind of a dystopian way. But we've sort of flipped the model, and we're looking at a very immersive glimpse of a utopian future through the white mirror, which has kind of been a holding name. We've been thinking of other names like wise mirror and all, but I think we're sticking with this thinking of a white mirror, because in these times of uncertainty and disruption, we're really seeing, we're challenging a lot of new mental models. And I think flipping to this new space, moving from scarcity to abundance, from hoarding to sharing, from darkness to light, and from me to we, really. And I think that's why we call it from moving from dystopia to utopia to Vtopia. And that's kind of the space this was actually the original article I wrote on it earlier this year on LinkedIn. But we've actually aligned ourselves very much. So I've got a great team in place of creative people. Brian is very much involved with that, and some great global creative artists.
That's it's interesting. Just can you go back to that back slide?
Yep, sure.
Just one back for me for a second. Go back to the one that had the list of the dystopian and the.
Oh yeah, that's this one. Yep.
Oh, it might be a lag on my screen, but
sorry.
So I just wanted to say that there looks to be a lot of alignment between the David Hawkins consciousness scale as well. If you look at those items on the right, they're basically the top of his scale, and the items on the left are the bottom of his scale, pretty much.
Right, yes. So yeah, I mean, that's what we've sort of seen. So many analogies, flipping the model from, that dystopian to that future, very positive sort of psychology based. And that's some of what we preach at Singularity University when, the founder, Peter Diamandis, talks about impacting 1 billion people. And that's kind of what we really talk about. And with his very deep positive psychology of abundance and trying to see that we've got enough with the planet, it just needs to be distributed rightly. So we've aligned ourselves actually to the UN SDGs, which I'm sure everybody or many people would be aware of. And we've been looking at a facet of these SDGs more in this sort of circular format or economy format, where it's the economy, the society, and the biosphere as a whole. And it's really number 17, which is then the collaboration and the partnerships to all the different goals, which becomes the central focus of how we can make it happen. And what we see through White Mirror is manifestations through multiple means. We've got comic books that are coming up right now, or impressions with the great creative people that we have on the team. And we've also got looking at products. And in fact, this was one of the ideas that I put forward in a webinar we did earlier. And this was about a spiritual awakening through a device called Calm with a company called Inspire XR. And we're talking about like an igloo or a wellness pod where one can go into and use the right tools, like I was talking about earlier, like a trip, like heart math, like Tesla suit potentially, or the Halo, neuroscience, Halo 2, or the Muse S band, for example. So integrating all of that different biofeedback and how we can go through that mind, detox in this place and come out really energized. And we've actually there's another aspect of a story that was considered in biotech oneness, where we looked at 3D printing of human organs and not using things where we're looking at animals and saving animal cruelty, for example. So there's a lot of thinking, and we've aligned these to the different SDGs we've been talking. And here's examples of some of the early impressions of comic books. So we're talking about a superhuman, superpowers through people's own means to actually. We've got a Hall of Fame there with basically different people with examples, like you can see Astro Boy there, or different examples. This is just an early impression, but we can take people through that journey of, and it all coins around through a museum of the future, which is what we've sort of based it at the central part of the initial White Mirror comic book. And then in terms of products, we're talking about something like this one called the Calm Mini, which is connected wellness. And it's really about, again, taking sound and music healing to a new level with the right frequency sort of space, and using light therapy and sound as some of the key means there. And similarly, we're sort of taking that where Brian, my friend, is sort of taken that along with Johnny from our team. We're building this VR experience with very deep biofeedback, really merging experiences with functional art, science, technology, and ancient wisdom, to energize ourselves. And then another part of what I see in White Mirror, what we've really been doing, and in fact, I was very fortunate a couple of weeks ago to be at my friend Nathan's 300 acres of beautiful, pristine forest up in Wollomboy, which is not far from where you are, I think, up near Cessnock County.
Yes, very close to us.
Yeah. So it's lovely Mount Yengo, as you know, which is nearby there, and that's where we're talking about this forest bathing and retreats and different scenarios that we can sort of play over there with in really getting deep closer to the rainforest, creeks, and Wilson's Camp, which is what this location is actually near Mount Yengo, but also taking people through journeys with Aboriginal elders who would give them the deeper understanding of spiritual learnings from the oldest living culture on the planet that we're so fortunate to have in our country here. And there are 10,000-year-old rock carvings that I was shown in near Mount Yengo, which was just really phenomenal to see and learn from these great things. So in White Mirror, what we've really been talking, you might have seen a similar sort of a chart that came about and distributed by many people as what have we really been learning through these exponential times and extraordinary times, even that people are moving from that initial fear zone to a learning zone, then to a growth stage, and then finally action, taking the right thing. So what we've really devised here is different levels of that through White Mirror. And an example is, initially people are complaining, but then they identify the emotions, they go through gratitude, and then it's people and planet, and really thinking that bigger space. So a lot of the vision that we have for White Mirror is how can we almost think of every corporation becoming like a B Corp, where they think of people, planet, and purpose before profit.
Yeah, can I just say a big amen to that?
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, that's really where we see the whole transformation happen, I think, with this great reset we're all going through. And it's, I would say, really amazing that many people are realizing that at this stage, and corporates are waking up to that new reality of being a lot more empathetic and bringing in those spaces of gratitude and so forth. And I think what we've also seen is with the World Economic Forum, a lot of the top skills that we've needed for thriving are being imbibed, and this is what we really see: critical thinking, creativity, and that's what we really need to move us to the next level. In fact, through technology, we're able to almost visualize and quantify some of these things through a app almost called Peak Performance Algorithm, which Neuroscar has developed. And you can look at your level of empathy and creativity and happiness quotients, for example, through this means. So there's some really interesting tinkering happening with the, with the brain-machine interface there.
I think it's interesting to see the stuff you're talking about in relation to mindset and technology, because you often hear about different technological challenges and the idea of wanting to adopt new technologies, but you don't often hear of the conversation of mindset in relation to that. And I think it's quite a gap in the conversation.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think that's where we need to evolve those old dogmas, as we talk about. It's not about consumer, it's about community. It's from moving from needs to wants, from empathy to meaning, and from story to narrative. And really, as we evolve from the physical, intelligent, emotional, spiritual to an adaptive, hyper adaptable sort of level of being, that we can build that total creative intelligence that will take us to that next level.
If I can just jump in, if anyone does have questions for Anuraj, please put them into the feed now. We've only got a few minutes left before Anuraj is going to wrap up, and we want to make sure that we get to a question if anyone has one. Thanks.
So I think people would be familiar with Ikigai, the Japanese philosophy of the reason for being. It's really what we love to do, what we're good at, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for. When it all converges, is really, and I think that's what the Ikigai at a much higher level. It's not just individual Ikigai; it's at the, as we say, in a community level or a corporate level, or even at a city, at a smart city. And that's what I meant about this consciousness in smart cities, where how do we talk about the Ikigai of a place,
community,
of a location,
community,
exactly, yeah. And I was very fortunate again this year at the World Economic Forum to be part of a global community that was formed with 35 leaders on conscious leadership. And it's really about what they're doing is exploring regenerative humanity, the role of humane technologies, ancient futures, and to achieve the SDGs really, that to that level, and take leadership, integrating aspects of awareness and community to a whole new level. So I think there's a lot of great things happening around the world, and this is just one of them that I was so fortunate to be exposed with. And in fact, the person who founded this community, Alvaro, who's also part of our White Mirror team, he's got this great company called Empatica, VR, which has been doing some really good work in this space and taking empathy to a whole new level through virtual reality sort of.
Anuraj, there is a question here, so I'm going to jump in and ask it. The question is from an earlier presenter, and he says, should we balance between passion and reflection, or should we oscillate? What's your view?
Between passion and reflection, that's a good point. I mean, it's
like, I think on one hand, you obviously are we all about wanting balance, or are we wanting about moving between two or more variables?
Right. Well, I think everybody's trying to achieve some level of balance, and we need to find that some level of equilibrium within our lives, and that's how we can harmonize between. But obviously, there are experimentations, as one does, and that's where we can be oscillating at a different level, different layer. Maybe if that's where I'm sort of gauging.
I think thinking. like most answers to good questions, it's usually both.
Exactly, that's right. Yeah, totally. I think that's what it really is, contextual, isn't it? On what aspect are you really trying to, what are you trying to do there, and how to really get to that stage of being,
Yeah. Okay, we've got about 3 more minutes. If you would like to wrap up, that would be beautiful.
Up anyway now. And I think it's about, I've got a couple more slides anyway. So it's about moving from that old VUCA, which was volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world, where obviously there's a lot of fragility, moving to that space of vision, understanding, clarity, and agility. And I think the future really needs to be shaped by us. And that's where technology can play such a key role, the exponential thinking and technology and the mindset. And the most exciting breakthroughs will not occur just because of technology. It's really about because of an expanding concept of what it means to be human.
The new VUCA is so much more effective.
Yeah, and I think my final slide really on some key takeaways is about, I think, really adapting that exponential times. How can we nurture our abundant mindset and incorporate those transformative humane technologies and taking that journey within. And it's really then connecting with the environment also. So it's outside and within. And so that's what I mean, oscillating, but also then harmonizing. So maybe it's the outside and the inside, which then go hand in hand. It's when you sort of keep your eyes open right through to closing and pondering, going truly to your consciousness level at that superconscious being that you are. And then finally embracing utopia, and nurturing what your white mirror future really is so that you can impact humanity at large at the right level.
Absolutely. And really having that key focus on what it actually means to be human, and
Yes.
how that interacts with what we're
Yeah.
talking. Thank you so much. You've done an amazing job as always. And I'm always
Yeah.
so impressed with how much information you get through in a short space of time. You've taken us from one place to another place in a very expert manner. So I want to say the massive thank you for your time, Anuraj, and your expertise.
No, it's a pleasure. Did we have some more time for questions, or is it already?
We unfortunately don't know because we've got another speaker immediately about to jump on.
Oh,
So
sure. Okay.
what we'll do though is feel free, Anuraj, if you want to get into the actual Superhuman Summit feed, as long as we're not going live, feel free to jump in there and take some questions from people and do it that way. That's no problem at all.
Oh, yeah. And I'm happy if people want to connect with me directly on LinkedIn or send me, an email even.
Fantastic. So connecting with you on LinkedIn is the best way to connect with you. So that's Anuraj Gambhir, and it's Gambhir. And I'm assuming you will have seen the way that Anuraj spells his name. But yeah, LinkedIn's the best place to catch him. Thanks again. We appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Cheers. Bye, Michelle.